Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. I'm excited to continue our conversation with Josh Thompson. He's a member of the AUB, or Apostolic United Brethren, also known as the Allred Group. In our next conversation, we're going to talk about his grandfather Rulin's succession into the leadership of what became the AUB. We'll also talk about authority for polygamy sealings, as well as how does a polygamist court other women. You won't want to miss this conversation. Check it out. But the second manifesto after Joseph F. Smith was called before Congress and said, we hear you're still doing polygamy.
Yeah. And I love the Smoot hearings are a fascinating read, and that's what we're referring to here.
Yeah.
And they're very comical. Just the blatant beating around the bush and refusing to answer. But because the church didn't believe it and the church didn't practice it. People are interested in Mormon history should read the Smoot hearings. They're quite entertaining.
I'm still trying to get Michael Paulus on. He's the expert go-to guy on the Smoot hearings. So
they have a book now. So you can really just read the whole thing.
Yeah, Michael Paulus did it.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And Condon Smith. So, in fact, you're reminding me that I need to contact him. Hopefully he comes to Utah in December. He's been very hard to get on.
Yeah. But
I like to call him Steve Nash because he looks like Steve Nash, the basketball
player. So after Joseph F. Smith, Heber J. Grant is the next leader of the church. And I'm actually not very educated on how exactly the succession occurred or how that all works in our system of belief, but that is where we make our separation, or we don't believe that Heber J. Grant held the keys to the priesthood at that point. So, and then we get our separation to where we believe John Woolley had them at that time, and then down to where we're at.
Okay, so I would think it was 33, 34, Heber J. Grant issues the third manifesto. We mean business. We're going to root them out. We're going to throw them in jail.
And he goes hard on that. Yeah,
goes hard on it. But then in I say 51, but I think it's pretty fuzzy exactly when it was. There's a split between what becomes the Allred Group and the FLDS Church.
Yeah, yep. That's
and
a wild story.
There's the raid in 1951, which contributes to that. Do you know? Do you have anything to share on that?
I could definitely comment on things that kind of led up to it over time, because even as early as before my grandfather Rulin was even put on the council, and he was just a lowly lay member, you would get comments from Rulin Allred, like in his writings and stuff, talking about some of the problems down there and the struggles that they were having. Things like marrying too young, marrying women without father's permission that were literally stolen from them. So things like that, and a lack of agency, like the priesthood says, you're supposed to marry so-and-so, so you have to. Things like that slowly developed over time, ended up finally resulting in a split after my grandfather was called. And from what I understand, the council at that time, when Joseph Musser called my grandfather on the council, really struggled with Rulin just because he was critical of the now FLDS group and the way things were going. And also that, believe it or not, that he was a doctor, and he was I don't know if you call it a gynecologist at that point, but he delivered a lot of babies. So there was like this feeling of violating the women. I don't know, something like that. So that was also a reason that had to do with it as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't understand how my grandfather had the time to do everything that he did. As I'm trying to just be a PA, and it's just so busy.
A physician's assistant.
Yeah. But yeah, because he was licensed as a chiropractor and naturopathic doctor, and a surgeon doctor. I would imagine that being a surgeon doctor back then was different than what it means now, because as far as I know, he never did surgery. I'm not sure on that one.
Oh.
Yeah. That, and he was just really involved, traveling all over the place. And he had like 19 wives as well.
Oh, wow.
I can't imagine trying to support that kind of a family with everything that he did on top of it. Well,
Yeah. So 51, we have the split between what later becomes the All Red Group or the AUB, and then the FLDS. Neither one of you incorporated until after 78, though. That's kind of interesting. In fact, the Peterson Group incorporated, I think, in 78, and it was 79, I think, for...
I don't know when the year was, but the only reason it was really done, as far as I know, was because for legal reasons. It just had to be done. And I wasn't around at that time, but I'm told a lot of people didn't want to do that. It just kind of became a necessity at the time. And like I mentioned earlier, we don't call ourselves the AUB either. It's the work.
You're just the work.
Yep.
Oh, that's interesting.
And the work is to keep all the principles alive that the church has gotten rid of. So it's kind of like our job, so to speak.
Okay. And so as far as other groups, it was 1986, so 100 years after 1886, the Centennial Park formed from the FLDS,
from
right?
the FLDS, from my understanding.
And so one of the big differences, I think, between, I'm still going to call you the AUB, because
sure.
The AUB and the FLDS, you guys dress normal. The FLDS dress distinctively with the strange hairstyles and the dresses and...
Yep, you'll recognize them when you see them, for sure. Yeah, and you won't recognize any of us.
Yeah, you just look like LDS people as far as we know. But I think Centennial Park also, they don't dress funny either.
As far as
the only
I know,
groups that dress funny are FLDS.
I would say that they dress more formally. I'm just going off of a couple interviews and people, like reporters that have gone down to investigate a little bit. Based on what I saw, they were very well-dressed people. I was super impressed with their children. I couldn't believe how good those kids are raised. So from Centennial Park.
You're talking about Centennial Park.
Impressed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are some other groups out there, the Peterson Group, Centennial Park, Nielsen Naylor, Thompson Group.
Yeah.
Thompson Group are a breakoff from AUB, aren't they?
They are, yep.
And then, of course, I don't know, did you happen to see my trip where I went out to Missouri and went to the new Fundamentalist Temple in Missouri?
I saw that you went.
It was the coolest thing. I had so much fun going there. And I remember when I first I went there, it was a week before the dedication, and we sat down, and because they're independent, which apparently is the largest group.
Yeah.
It's not really a group. There are more independents than any other fundamentalist groups. But so they created a temple. The nearest town is Humansville in Missouri. And so we sat down, there was about 4 or 5 people sitting there, and I'm like, so what's your background? Oh, I'm former LDS. I'm former AUB. I'm former Centennial Park. I'm former, what was the other group in there? Anyway, I was just like, wow, so this is really an eclectic group. And so my question to you is, and this gets back to priesthood because it's all about authority, right?
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, it seems like you try to give the benefit of that to the LDS. What do you think about these other groups, the Peterson Group, Centennial Park? Do you get along with them? Do you recognize their authority to do plural marriages?
That was a hard one for me because, and these are just my beliefs. That's where I think God's a lot more liberal than we like to think. I believe there has to be proper authority. I believe it has to be done correctly in order for it to stand. But I also believe that people that are trying their best to live the fullness of the gospel and do everything that they can are going to get the grace, and that God will judge their hearts, and that things will be put in order and done properly for them. So in my mind, just me talking, I like it. Yeah, I think it's wonderful.
Okay.
I don't believe that they have the authority to do it. I don't believe they have the proper keys to do that kind of a thing. But since they're good men trying their best to live the fullness of the gospel, I think God will count that to them for sure.
Okay. Because my understanding, one of the big differences between FLDS and AUB was who's in charge, and not Warren Jeffs. What's his dad's name? Rulon Jeffs.
Rulon. Okay.
Rulon was like, no, one man has to be in charge of this. That's the way Brigham Young did it. He created kind of an LDS style church where you have a prophet, Rulon Jeffs, and then Warren Jeffs, and I think 12 apostles. I'm not 100% sure. It's really hard to get an FLDS person on here, I'll tell you that.
No, I don't think you ever will.
I don't either. I'm grateful that I got an AUB here, finally. It's only taken me forever. But the AUB with the Council of Friends was more distributed. It wasn't just one man that was in charge. It was kind of a council of 7. I talked to an independent fundamentalist, because that was my big authority. My big question was like, well, so if you're an independent, where are you getting your authority? And he was like, well, I'm the patriarch of my home. By virtue of being the patriarch, I can seal my daughters to their husbands. And so in independence, a father would perform the sealing for his daughter, usually daughters, unless, maybe the father's dead or something, and then maybe father, the groom, would do it or something. But so how does that work with your group?
We do, if it's a polygamous marriage, we do have to have permission from people on the council to be able to proceed with that.
Okay.
It's a hard
So you wouldn't
process.
just recognize any old father as having the sealing power?
No, would not. And even if they were granted the sealing power, they would still
have to go through the proper channels.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. I will say that we kind of have a little bit of the same view about being the patriarch of the family. Like a father can give a patriarchal blessing to his children.
So you don't have a special patriarch calling?
We do, actually.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. But a father also is a patriarch to his family.
Okay.
So yeah, we're definitely, I can see some ties with that thinking, just not that far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And apparently, so I remember talking to some fundamentalists and they were like, so what about like courtship and marriage? That's what fundamentalists want to know. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think to ask that. But I will say, going back to this Polygamy USA from National Geographic, I bought season 1.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Because I guess with the FLDS is the prophet is like, hey, let's put these two together. And, like he's like the matchmaker of the group.
That's my understanding as
Whereas in the AUB, like you choose your own. With Centennial Park, this is what I found interesting. And I think it's to go against the charges of, oh, it's just a bunch of predatory males, one that has sex all the time and they'll pick all the girls.
Yeah.
And so in the Centennial Park, one of the things that they showed was the guys don't ask the girl to get married. The girl asks the guy to get married. Like she's like, I prayed. I think I should join your family.
Yeah.
And in one episode, I shouldn't give this away for those of you who want to see it, but you should see it. They had a missionary, and they were more service missionaries, not proselyting missionaries like LDS. Like, let's go pick up the garbage around town. And everybody's got dirt roads. You got this gigantic garbage truck. Of course, it's going to get stuck on a bunch of dirt roads. Are you kidding me? But so they brought this guy in. He looked like he was in his 20s. Went into the mission president. Hey, you're released. Go get married or whatever. And then like a week later, this woman says, I think we should get married. And he's like, well, I guess we should start dating. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. At least from my perspective.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, I think it should be a mutual thing. Not, I would just be like, man, I don't know. What if somebody asked me to marry him and I didn't want to marry him? This would be just weird to me. But so does it work that way in your group?
There really is no set way at all. It's every case is very different.
Okay.
Along that lines with the women saying, I'm going to marry you. This is my personal belief here. This is something that is not even taught in our group. This is very much my personal belief. I believe that a righteous woman has the right to marry whoever she wants to. And I think that plural marriage affords that. I'm just going along with
I
that.
can commend Centennial Park for trying to get away from the, hey, a creepy guy is going to ask 5 women to marry him or whatever.
Yeah.
So I can applaud that as at least giving the women autonomy to be like, oh, Josh looks cute. I shouldn't say cute.
That's the reason.
That's, but I want to marry Josh or whatever. Because it definitely puts the shoe on the other foot. But I will just mention this really quickly. There was looked like he was about 16, 18 years old, maybe 18 years old. There was another story on Polygamy USA where this guy wanted to marry this girl, and they'd been dating for a long time, but they weren't doing it the right way.
Yeah.
And so the father of this kid was like, well, I want you to make $10,000 to prove that you are worthy to be marriage material or something. And so, like, they don't deny like regular dating, like LDS or, Christians would do, but it's better to go through the revelation process, I thought. Anyway, it was just very interesting. But can you describe courtship in your group?
Yeah. So the first wife is pretty much just like in the LDS church. I feel like we are.
So you just date like normal, and
yeah. I feel like we're a lot more strict with the asking the girl's father. I feel like in more traditional church members still do that, but it's not. I don't feel like it's as expected as it is in our religion. So if you married a girl without talking to the dad, that would be quite disrespectful. So
okay.
So we do have that. It's a terrifying question to ask. So, but after that, it felt, as far as I know in my experience,
if the dad says no, you're just out of luck.
I wouldn't say out of luck. I went through this with my second father-in-law. So, the key is to convince your father-in-law that you're not a loser, because I was living in a trailer. So there are a lot of concerns about me being able to provide, because we get large families.
Yeah.
And if you're just a lazy bum,
you got to be a physician's assistant to afford all this stuff, right?
I would not say that's the reason, but that definitely is some icing on the cake for sure, because polygamy is expensive. But so yeah, I kind of had to go through that phase myself of just really trying to convince him through my actions that I wasn't who he thought that I was, and that I was very, very sincere about what I was doing. And then a year later, we finally got married. It took a while, but yeah, it happened, and he finally gave his permission.
So does your wife have any input on that? Like, hey, you should go marry Sally or whatever, or she'd be great to join our family.
Yep. They do. In fact, if you go to a council member and with a wife that you want to be in your family and your other wives are not there, I'll send you off and say this meeting can't happen.
So is it kind of a group decision about the husband and the wife pick another wife?
Yeah.
Or could somebody just be like, hey, I had a revelation, I should marry Josh?
You could say that. Usually revelations about men marrying women usually goes south really quick. And I'm going to be a little vulgar, but we call them 6-inch revelations.
Uh-oh.
Right? You can think about what that means. So there's.
But if a woman has a revelation,
if a woman had a revelation, it's looked at quite a bit differently.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. But if a guy has a revelation on a woman, he should keep it to himself and not tell anybody, and trust in God that he'll work it out. Like, it never goes good. It does not work to do that. It's a terrible idea, and quite frankly, it's creepy. So
I've talked to Moroni, and he was like, his current, like, he's a monogamous right now, but he's like, his wife is like, we should get another wife.
Yeah. And
he's like, who? He's having some health problems. Like, who wants a big disabled old guy?
He is big.
But so generally speaking, the first marriage is just like regular dating, and then the second marriage is like the husband and wife kind of get together and
Yeah. So with the plural, it's a lot more kind of like dating the family. So the sister wives are getting to know each other, coming over with the kids, so the kids get to know the new wife as well. It is a lot more formal. There's a lot more boundaries with it all because you're a married man at that point. So it's very different, and it's a lot more complicated than the first, for sure. Especially when you're new to it, it's a lot to navigate. It's really hard.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
But back on that, honestly, while it can go any number of ways, it always works best if it's your wife and the other lady that are really pushing
it,
yeah.
pushing it more than the guy.
And that's not official by any means. I think that's.
Do they have guys be like, you know what? I'm good with 2. I don't need any more. I got enough headaches. Does that happen?
I actually hear that 2 is the hardest.
Oh, it is?
I've been told that by a lot.
Oh.
But I only have 2, so I don't know. That's what I'm used to. But apparently when you get 3, it kind of mellows out. I grew up with 3 moms, so.
Oh, wow.
That was kind of the life that I was used to.
Seems like it went south for Cody at 4.
Yeah. We were kind of, I can't remember if we were on air talking about that or off air, but that whole thing with Cody, a lot. I was pretty young when that whole thing started, but I remember, at least in my group in Pinesdale, people weren't very happy about that show coming on.
Oh, really?
It's just the actual intricacies of the lifestyle, we just don't really want broadcasted. It's sacred to us. But they did it. They did it anyway. So I have no idea if they're even members anymore. I don't know anything.
Well, it sounds like he's divorced all 3 of his previous wives. And
yeah, and I think he's still married to Robin. Yeah. And Robin is actually my cousin, not by blood, but through one of my other mothers.
Oh,
so I've met her once. Yeah.
I know where their house was in Lehigh.
Nice.
Is there anything else we're missing? I got another topic, but it's not related to polygamy at all.
Let me talk about the word of wisdom, because I feel like that's the difference.
Oh, that is a difference.
Yeah. And but with the word of wisdom, I always love talking about the word of wisdom, because in fundamentalism, you usually have the idea of being more strict on things, but in fundamentalism and the word of wisdom, it's the opposite.
You're way looser.
Yeah.
Except for the Peterson group, stricter. Did you know
are
that?
they? I didn't know that.
No chocolate.
Are they more strict than the church?
No chocolate and no
chocolate.
pork. I was like, what? Yeah. We went to a Mexican restaurant, and at the end, they brought us a bunch of chocolate mints, and they just slid them towards me.
Yeah?
I'm like, all right, I'll take them. I like chocolate. But yeah, most fundamentalists are
a lot more lax with it. That said, it is on things like our recommend interviews. I feel like with our
group, coffee and tea are okay.
I wouldn't say officially. There's kind of a cultural thing in our group. Some people are for it. Some people are against it. I personally love coffee. I drink it all the time.
Okay.
But the way that it's posed to individuals is more along the lines of, are you obeying the word of wisdom to the best of your ability to what you believe? And people have different perspectives on what that means and what they do to live the word of wisdom. So if in your heart, you're trying to be healthy, take care of your body, then that's the extent of the questions. So for me, even though I drink coffee, even though I know it's not always good for me, and have pop and things like that, I also exercise a lot, and I feel like I take care of my body. And I'm trying to be healthy. So for me, I feel like I live the word of wisdom, even in spite of some of the specifics that might be listed on the word of wisdom. The spirit is more important to us than the words.
Okay. Because I do remember, I shouldn't be giving away all the Polygamy USA stuff, but maybe people want to watch it. They had like a bachelor party, and there was drinking.
Oh, yeah?
So,
that one actually
barley
surprises
drinks are
me.
not against the word of wisdom, right?
Yeah.
So that means beer.
Yeah.
And you can use wine for your sacraments.
Yep. A party with drinking does surprise me. I would say that does not happen in the AUB. Some people do drink, but it's more along the lines of like a social aspect. There's an occasion, an anniversary or something.
A wedding.
Or a wedding, yeah. Absolutely under no circumstances would getting drunk ever be condoned. So for myself, I'll usually have a drink of something on
like
my
a glass of
anniversary.
wine or something.
Yeah. I think it's disgusting, but I do it because it's my anniversary and I'm trying something new.
You don't like wine?
I hate alcohol.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. I got a drink of scotch from my birth year, 1987. They let me get one little tiny swallow for $20. It was so gross. But,
oh, wow. Because I think scotch isn't that more hard liquor? Because from what I understand, because I don't drink at all. I don't know all the nuances for drinking, but from what I understand, wine and beer are okay, but like vodka or scotch would be a no-no against the word of wisdom.
I would say there's nothing official,
or at least in moderation.
There's cultural differences and little differences of perspective in our group. There's a lot of these things. We're not like the church in that we write down all of these things. A lot of these things just kind of develop culturally, and we discuss them and talk about them and have different views. So for myself, I like drinking every once in a big while, and I'm opposed to being drunk. I feel like a lot of people probably have that same stance, or just don't drink at all.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then, should we get into CBD?
I mean, if we want to.
I think that was something we added. We're like, okay, no illegal drugs either. But now cannabis is sort of legal, right?
It's getting there. It's not legal to use unless it's medical, and even then, the laws around that are a little weird. You have to get like a provider's license for it. A doctor can't prescribe it because it's federally against the law, but he can say, this is a good idea. If you're going to do this, if you're going to break the law, this is what you should do. This is what you should take.
Well, don't we can't you buy it at the state liquor store now?
I don't quite understand how that all works, to be honest. I'm actually just barely learning about these laws in PA school.
You're learning about them?
Yeah. It's slowly developing in the field of medicine using it. So it's one of the things we talk about. But in our religion, I've never heard of anybody using marijuana, at least that was approved of. Not something we believe in doing. I feel like generally, if it inhibits you, takes away your judgment, and makes it where you're not in control of your own mental faculties, it's going to be opposed.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Anything else we need to talk about before we get into a movie review?
So I know there's a lot of little differences too, because there's the 3 pillars. I always forget his name. Not Moroni, Joe Jessup mentioned. Those are probably the big ones, but we also have a lot of smaller ones too. Like the garment, we don't believe that the LDS church wears the proper garment anymore.
Need to go down to the wrists and ankles.
Yep. So a fully covering garment, and we believe in the old school belief of physical protection from the garment, and that's why you should cover your whole body.
Okay.
I know we disagree on missionary work. We still believe that missionary work should be done without purse or script. And we have we have some different views on consecration because we don't believe it's just consecration of the heart. We believe in consecrating everything that you possessed physically. And we try our hardest to live united order. It never really works out very well. And I'm told that the Kingston group is probably the prime example on living the united order, from what I've heard. But
they're doing it the best?
I've heard some people in my religion say that. Yeah. Yep.
You know anybody in the Kingston group I can talk to?
I know a couple people that left the Kingston group to join the AUP.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I really don't know how they do it, though. I know that it's really difficult to live. For us, there's also a lot of difficulties with actually making it work with the current laws and the way that things are set up. So, like in one of our communities, it's all one big piece of property, but the houses are individually owned. So, if you end up leaving, you own the house, but you don't own the property. It creates kind of an interesting legal dilemma there. Can't really take the house.
Put it on wheels and take it down the road, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I think that's all that comes to my my head, if people are interested in actually really getting into all the minute differences.
Because I do get emails all the
Yeah.
time. Hey, I would like to learn more about fundamentalism. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
If people really
you
want
want me to forward you those
see-
emails?
I do enjoy talking about it. I get people that will message me and ask questions and stuff. I love
Some of
talking
them
about
are
it.
from Europe too. That's the
Yeah.
weird thing. Like, hey,
Yeah.
can I do fundamentalism in Europe? I don't know.
Yeah. If people are interested in really getting into the differences and they want to know about it, my great-grandfather, Byron Harvey Jr., wrote a book called A Leaf in Review. And it has it just goes over chapter by chapter, a bunch of...
Is that on Amazon?
I would imagine you could get it on Amazon. You should actually look it up because if you wouldn't mind, I'm curious if it has
A Leaf in Review.
A Leaf in Review. Yeah.
I'll check on Amazon right now.
I'm curious if it's a book that's actually easy to get anymore because I would imagine it's not published.
I'm not seeing it on Amazon.
You might be able to get it off of is it ebooks? Or you can buy. You seem to be able to get really obscure Mormon books through that company.
Ebooks is the name
I think
of
it's
the
called
company?
ebooks. They have their headquarters in Nauvoo, the actual building, but most of their stuff is online.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, my Rule and Allred's dad, Byron Harvey Jr., when he was discovering plural marriage, he wrote that book to share with others his perspective on the changes that were being made and the things that were wrong in the LDS church. You know? And a lot of what we have now, I feel like, again, developed out of the thoughts in that book.
Okay, so as far as missionary work goes, you do it without purse or script. Are you proselyting missionaries or service missionaries or both?
Proselyting? Well, actually, I guess technically it would be both because it would be whatever you're moved upon by the Spirit to do. Because in the early days of Mormon history, they would go to the coast and they didn't have money, so they would get a job, make money, and interact with the people that they associated with and teach lessons when they could at people's houses. And then on the boat, they would teach the people there, and it was just looking for every opportunity that they could. But in our belief system, we believe that all that work is supposed to be done by fully trusting in God. You don't take the comforts of life with you, your money and things like that. You're just supposed to be 100% you and your relationship with God and being directed by the Spirit to go where He tells you to.
So would you proselytize among LDS more, or would you go out to the quote-unquote Gentiles?
I would say technically we wouldn't do any because that's the church's function. We're not the church. So that's one of those things that we just think is being done out of order, but it's also it's one of the keys of the church, the ecclesiastical area.
Because didn't Brigham Young used to call people in conference and be like, Josh, you need to go to wherever, Tahiti or whatever.
Yep. Yeah. I would love to see that. Yeah.
So you guys don't do it's more of like, I feel called to go on a mission. I'm going to go to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to...
well, it would be the way that it used to be done. It's just that we don't do that now at all because it's not our place. We'd like to, but it's not our place. It's a church function. It's part of the ecclesiastical
So you just
branch.
recognize the LDS missionaries as doing
God's work. Yep. We think it's not being done correctly, but we still believe they're doing God's work.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what would you do differently?
Well, I can't say because I'm not then. All I would say is only just that basic point that if you're going to do a mission, it should be done without any money.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure what you call them, but they go and stay at random people's houses that take them in, from my understanding. So you wouldn't have that. You would sleep on the road.
It seems logistically a lot better this way, though, I think. So, okay. So that's the main thing is, because honestly, if you think about it, the way the LDS church is, in a way, they're kind of doing it without purse or script. It's just the parents are paying the person the script. But they're paying the purse and they're doing the script.
Yep. But I'd also say that they've got everything lined up. They've got a place to stay, the food to eat, everything's taken care of that they need, their necessities. And I feel like that gets to the heart of our difference of belief, is that if the necessities are all taken care of and you don't have to worry about them, then it takes away from having to rely on God for everything. And when you're doing missionary work, you should be reliant on God for literally everything to direct your life. And so you have that connection with the Spirit, for the Spirit to be able to direct you where to go, who to teach to, and things like that.
You can spend more time when you don't have to work, get a job, though.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. And I spent a lot of time having to work just to get fare to go to different places and do things and fight for opportunities to be able to talk at buildings and rent buildings out. It seems like usually they would just speak in people's houses that would take them in randomly.
Right.
And I do understand nowadays that probably wouldn't work. The world.
Well, Peterson Group still does it that way.
Do they do missionary work?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Oh, they come to Sunstone. You need to come.
I really do.
They're always there.
It's funny you say that, because I keep thinking about Sunstone and wanting to go, and I see the pictures from my friends on Facebook that go, and because I am more of a spiritually type-minded person, I also absolutely love the intellectual side of things and looking at the Mormon problems and the apologetics and the arguments and stuff. So I really enjoy things like that. Dave Watson's wife also does as well, which I think you knew that.
Yeah, Marianne, yeah.
Yeah, she's written a couple books.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the funny thing about the Peterson Group is, you know how the LDS, well, until recently, were always white shirts and name tags. Now they allow blue shirts, I think.
Yeah.
That's their big, I don't think there's any other colors. But the Peterson Group has, like, one day they wear purple shirts and the next day they wear blue shirts. And they like color coordinate. Okay, today's a blue shirt day. Tomorrow's a purple day. Next day's a green shirt day.
So they have nothing actually like a formal setup for how they dress on a day-to-day basis.
I mean, they do have name tags.
Yeah.
They're like green and white.
Yeah.
I think you'd enjoy talking to them.
I would. I did have I used to work at a cabinet company, and we did have I had a coworker there that came from there that was investigating our group. So I heard a little bit. That was actually the first time I'd even heard of the Peterson branch, was through him.
Yeah.
So I really don't know much about them at all.
They're of all the groups, they've been on my podcast twice.
Yeah.
And they're the most, well, no, that's, 3 times. They're the most open.
Yeah.
And I will say, when they came on the first time, they were really worried. And they were like, that actually turned out really well. Yeah. So hopefully the AUB can do the same thing. That wasn't so bad.
I feel like generally, it's not so much that people from the AUB are just opposed to talking and being more public, so much as we're just not so interested in the intellectual side of stuff and the discussions and the culture changes and things. And it's just, we are there to live our religion. We need to actually be living our religion rather than talking about the issues and debating. And while I am personally into that stuff, I'm kind of an exception to that because I try more and more to step out of that world and to really focus on actually living the principles.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's bad for my programming, though.
That's true.
So I'm still trying to get some people. In fact, I just had somebody who's like, hey, you should talk to somebody from Kingston's. And I was like, do you know anybody? Because I don't.
Yeah, I've never known anybody except for 2 people that converted to our religion from there. So
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm open, Centennial Park, Nielsen Naylor, I'm trying to remember the other groups, Kingston, Fred Collier, whatever. Like, I don't know a ton about them. I know the names, but I don't know a ton about them. But
yeah.
This is where it's really interesting. I mean, I will tell you this. So the Church of Jesus Christ, known as the Bickertonites, based in Monongahela, Pennsylvania. I went to church in Florida, as I mentioned earlier, and I had a member of their church come up to me and say, hey, I attended your baptism. And I was like, for your church, the LDS church. And I was like, oh, nice. And she goes, I thought it was really weird that you guys baptized kids so young. They were only 8. I was like, what's wrong with that?
I never understood that argument personally. People make that.
Well, and the Bickertonites are like, no, that's the the person usually, I think the youngest they would baptize anybody is about 14.
Yeah.
And it's basically, I feel like it's time to be baptized.
Yeah.
And so
as in the person themselves says,
yeah, the person themselves. And so like 20 is way more common.
Yeah.
Like 14 to 22 is probably, because they're like, well, hey, you're still a child. Like, and so so it's that's what I love about these kind of conversations, is it's so interesting, because I would not have even, I mean, it's so normal to baptize an 8-year-old in my church. I would be like, what? That's just normal. But it's not normal for other people. Is it? It is still
very normal
for
us. Yeah. That's how we do it. I don't quite understand the reason to be opposed to it. I guess I understand where they're coming from. Like, you should know what.
Well, do you really know what you're doing at 8? I mean, I can see that argument.
I can see the perspective of it. I see it being a positive to wait. I don't see it being a negative to do it at 8. They're a young kid who wants to follow somebody that their parents believe in, Jesus Christ, who is a perfect being and believes in doing good and blessing people and helping others and serving. And at 8 years old, if my kid is thinking about that, I'd love to do anything to try and enforce that. So I don't see the negative of doing that.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Josh Thompson, a member of the Apostolic United Brethren, or AUB. In our next conversation, we're going to hit a movie review, the movie Heretic.
I enjoyed it because it was new. It was really interesting. Throwing in these dialogues that they were having, it made it really intriguing. But at the same time, and I feel like most Mormons that are into apologetics will probably agree with me, the points that were brought up are just kind of old news. There's not really nothing that really blew anybody away.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you to continue to enjoy Gospel Tangents. Consider becoming a Patreon, or go to gospeltangents.com/shop, and you can get a cool tie, a hat, or even a nice mug. You can also get a sweatshirt. So check it out at gospeltangents.com/shop.